Coming up this week on the Markcast. Well, just 1 week ago, the XFL and USFL announced their intentions to merge, sending shockwaves through the alt football landscape. But now it's business as usual.
Please disperse. Nothing to see here.
Both leagues conducting business on their own. XFL has a showcase this weekend. USFL free agency is in full swing. Lots of mixed messages here. Are both leagues doing demonstrable damage to their fan bases while we wait for news from the merger? We discuss. We welcome Dan Kaplan back onto the program to get his thoughts on everything regarding the XFL-USFL merger timeline. Are we really waiting on the federal government here? Is it more the leagues that need to get their affairs in order? We get Dan's thoughts on that, as well as whether or not he thinks that this merged league could even be a success moving forward.
They're not going to put in a press release. Anytime you bring two companies together, there's massive egos involved, and that we can always become narcissistic and refuse to merge. I don't think you'll see that. So, and I think any corporate merger that's announced or the intent when they put out intended to merge, it's because it was leaked out like we had in this case. It's almost boilerplate to say pending regulatory approval.
Then speaking on the subject of potentially upsetting and disgruntling fan bases, Greg Parks of XFL Board joins us again, talking through kind of the roller coaster of emotions that XFL and USFL fans are going through. Is the destination worth it? Are we still going to be here whenever we arrive at this promised land?
If I'm going to dedicate myself to covering a league, I'm going to jump in with both feet, and I'm going to leave no stone unturned. And in order to do that, I have to be passionate about it. I have to believe, as you said, I think you put it very nicely, I have to believe in the vision that they're selling me. And if I don't believe in that, I'm not going to cover it just to say I can cover it. I'm not going to cover it just because I feel an obligation to spring football or whatever the case may be. I'm going to go outside and touch grass instead. I don't know.
Then Eddie Steele, CFL Zone, joins us again, talking through everything CFL Week 18. I am getting ready to head up to BC to watch America's CFL team. BC Lions host the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Huge weekend of CFL action.
Me as a Canadian, I love it, but put the Canadian aside, man. We need some better quality quarterback play across the league. I don't care what your passport says. We just need some better quarterback play, and I don't think anybody can deny that.
Then fresh off his viral onside punt last week, Jeshrun Antwi of, I would say, our CFL team of the East, the Montreal Alouettes, stops by the program, catching up with him. Hope you guys enjoy it. Like and subscribe. Hey guys, welcome to the Markcast. Reed here. Really weird times right now in the XFL-USFL landscape. I joked with Eddie Steele before our interview. I said, it must be nice to focus on just one football league that's not trying to merge with its competition here in the States. Really odd times, weird times, roller coaster of emotions right now. That's kind of my topic today, talking through all of this. Obviously, we've been inundated with, there's going to be 10 teams or 12 teams or 6 hubs or traveling hubs or, conferences, or we should be 3 conferences, kind of all this different stuff, kind of endless speculation in terms of all that. Today, focusing a little bit more on the timeline. What do we expect? What's kind of the holdup? What are we working through? The hurdles right now with Dan Kaplan. And then, like I said, kind of that roller coaster of emotion that the XFL and USFL fans are going through. Very much feeling that. Felt very similar kind of over the last couple of years. Lack of communication, with getting the Vegas Vipers deal going and getting the schedule going out and kind of all this stuff. You kind of drag people along here, kind of lead them out in the dark a little bit, starting to kind of feel the repercussions of that, both kind of in our circle and seeing fans online. So, whenever we get to this merger, whether it's this year or 2025 or whatever, is that destination, what casualties have you incurred along the way to kind of get to that? That's kind of to boil down kind of the thesis for today with this business as usual theme. Like I said, huge shout out Dan Kaplan working through his time to come on the program. Greg Parks making time late at night. I really appreciate that. And I hope you guys enjoy my conversation with Eddie Steele. Extended time with him. Really appreciate all the time that he put into that late at night with his schedule as well. And then obviously the Montreal Alouettes, Jeshrun Antwi, and all of that. Appreciate the team over there for setting that up. That's going to do it for me today. Hope you guys enjoy heading up to Vancouver for the big CFL Week 18 showdown with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers traveling in to take on America's CFL team, the BC Lions. Hope you guys enjoy the episode. I think Dan gives some fruitful information in there that we didn't necessarily know. I think that's good to process as we kind of sit and work through all of this of when we are expecting news. So hope you guys enjoy it. Like and subscribe. We'll see you at the end. Well, it certainly seems a little cyclical here. Last time we had Dan Kaplan on, we were talking the XFL. I think it was like the Shark Tank episode. The XFL was seeking investors. Now, we talked with the CFL. Now we're talking with the USFL. What do you make of all this? Kind of, like I said, very cyclical in nature here. It feels like we're reaching out to more parties.
Well, clearly there's not enough room in the American sports marketplace for two spring leagues. Whether there's enough room for one is a question we can get to, but clearly there's not enough room for two. We've seen spring leagues come and die. The first two versions of the XFL, the UFL, the European League the NFL had, the original USFL, which obviously transitioned to fall. So there's a limited amount of shelf space in the American sports ecosystem because there's so many different sports out there and so many different forms of entertainment. And whether there's enough appetite for people to continue to watch football after the Super Bowl for months on end. And this last year, we had football go from the preseason of the NFL in August of 2022, and it went straight through to July of 2023 with the USFL. So there's clearly a need for these two leagues to merge, or at least one of them to get out of the way. And we'll see what happens here, but there's just not enough room for two.
Yeah, well, and Dan, we now have CFL here through even still, so we've never had a break. Like I was talking we had Greg Parks on this stuff. Like, even for us doing this, and now you're getting back into the NFL again, and it's kind of this full circle. Are you surprised? Obviously USFL through the first two seasons, XFL won. It came out, the Forbes article, they had lost $60 million, right? They had immediate kind of, okay, we're cutting back marketing staff, we're reworking that. Are you just surprised, like year one, feels like one and done here? We kind of got to figure out what we're doing, that we didn't, we're not trying to run this back at least one more time?
Well, 60 million is for these leagues is not the worst amount of loss for year one. I mean, XFL 2.0 under Vince McMahon lost over 100 million in their half a season. Now they really put money into marketing. They had a different structure in which the teams were in their own markets, whereas this current version of XFL 3.0, the team, as we all know, the teams operate out of a base and fly into their home markets for games. So that clearly brought costs down, but whether that 60 million could be brought down to 20 million, 10 million, a break even, a profit in years 2 or 3, that's very questionable. And the XFL has an equity fund behind it, Redbird Capital, and they're not going to sit around and just suck up $60 million losses year after year.
Because that to me feels like, and I don't know, what we've talked on here, and I run my own business, startup, and there's always costs. Like, are we not prepared for that? Are we just unwilling to accept that? Because you're never going to come out in a spring. USFL was profitable to NBC because they were paying to license some of the games to play on there. Like USFL lost money for Fox as well. I mean, let's not make any mistakes about it. They can just write it out differently. Like it just feels to me that it's weird that we're not capable of accepting any sort of setback, as opposed to just we need to be profitable from the get-go.
Well, I don't think that the XFL backers thought they would be profitable from the get-go, but I mean, clearly there was something about the size of the loss they weren't expecting. Otherwise, they wouldn't look to merge right away. I think most people thought after 2 or 3 years these two entities might merge. I mean, this is after year one of XFL, which is, I guess, pretty good considering what happened to XFL 2.0 and the end of the XFL 1.0. So when you have private equity behind you, and if they're disappointed with the losses, they're going to move pretty quick to end it. So that's how I see it. When they when they were in the market looking for investors, I remember I asked Jerry Cardinal, who runs Redbird Capital. That's why it's called Redbird. His last name is Cardinal. So I asked him at an event, why are you looking for investors? Are you losing money? He says he took umbrage at that and said, no, things are fine. We're just looking for strategic partners. He protested too much, in my opinion. Clearly, I was talking for this story that we have up there from Awful Announcing. I talked to Randy Pataha. He owned one of the original USFL teams. He was a New England Patriot wide receiver in the 70s. And he's, since the early 90s, been a sports investment banker. And he loves talking about spring leagues. And he says what these spring leagues always fail to account for is it's very expensive to play football. You have large teams, large equipment costs. The insurance is out of sight, the medical insurance and all. This was a big problem for the Alliance of American Football. If you recall, they had problems with insurance with some of the teams. The Florida team couldn't get insurance, and they had a headquarter in Georgia, if you remember. So it's much more complicated and much more expensive than a lot of the operators coming in expect.
Is there more pressure on XFL, you think, with Redbird and all that behind, where I don't know, to me, like, we'll never really know with Fox, and because they kind of do their budget hocus pocus a little bit, and we're going to move this or do that, or so, like, is there more pressure on the XFL to immediately show profitability because of the money behind it, where maybe USFL can ride that out longer with Fox?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a immediate profitability, but it's certainly not significant losses, and not losses that are forecast going off into the future. We don't know what the budget looks like for the next 2 or 3 years for an independent XFL. But if they're looking to merge with the USFL, it's certainly a signal that they realize it's better to not go it alone. And if the losses of $60 million continued, Redbird would have just cut bait. They would have pulled out. I realize The Rock gets all the attention, but the real money is Redbird.
In terms of, we were talking like the schedule of all this, and you have your ratings in here and kind of the general ratings for the season. Like, I think both were fine, right? I mean, we saw the USFL exist without XFL for the first season. And then, they did kind of cannibalize during that crossover. And then USFL was never as high afterward, right? It was that football fatigue or whatever. But what did you make of kind of the overall, quote unquote success of the XFL from a TV sports landscape?
The XFL USFL, they did fine. I mean, they averaged about 600,000 plus viewers, which is, it's better than the NHL does during the regular season for regular season games nationally. So, but the hockey's always been a niche sport, so that's not so surprising. If you go back to XFL 2.0, they were doing much better than that when they got shut down. It's just hard when you don't have, in the USFL's case, you don't have most of the teams in their home markets where they're playing in the XFL. You don't have the teams with an established base doing community outreach every day. That's tough. I understand why they're doing it, to try to keep the costs down, but it's hard to build a fan base when you're not in that market, when you're not reading about the players every day. I mean, if you're following an NFL team, an NBA team, the sports press they're covering them every day. The players are doing community charity outreaches. Their scandals are in the press. If you're not in the market, if you fly in for a game and then you fly out, it's a different animal.
In terms of the kind of the theme of this episode, right? So, we had the Axios report come out. Okay, this is happening. Then last week we had the official press releases, kind of messaging from everybody. Hey, the intent is to merge, and I want to talk to you kind of like regulatory stuff, what might be a sticking point. But now, USFL is kind of they're doing their free agency. They're moving players. XFL, they have a showcase this weekend. Like, it's very much, we're operating business as normal. But we're doing the merger thing maybe, but we got to do this anyway. Like, how are you reading that? Because it feels to me as like a spring football. We've covered this for 3-4 years now. Like, you're asking a lot of these fans of like, hey, still be excited about next year. I just got an email. One of the teams is selling like suites for, the stadium, but then also this might not even exist here in 6 months. I mean, like, what do you make? Cause to me, it's very concerning that like we have these two competing messages going on.
Yeah, they're in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. If they don't go forward with the marketing of the suites and doing their combines and drafts and all, and they don't do that, and the merger doesn't occur, then they're screwed. So they have to send these mixed messages at this point because Axios broke the story, so they went out and confirmed it a week later, and it is always possible the talks break down. I mean, egos get involved. Who's going to run this league? Is it going to be the XFL people? Is it going to be the USFL people? What rules will they keep? What teams will they keep? What markets will they keep? Will The Rock be as front and center in a new merge league? So there's lots of questions, and as I said, egos can get involved. So you have to move forward, presuming it doesn't happen from an operational perspective. You have to move forward if you're the USFL and the XFL as if you're going to play 2024 the way you played 2023. So if you're a suite holder or a fan buying tickets, that's tough. I mean, you might be buying tickets to a market that won't even exist next year. So that's I wouldn't want to be the head of sales for that.
It just feels, there's always been this contentious relationship anyway. In USFL, we have real football for real fans and we're running Super Bowl ads and all of that. Like, I don't know. I mean, that's why people had asked me forever, like, do you see this happening? And I said, no. I mean, obviously practicality says that these, like you said, there's only so much landscape and all of this, but I don't. There are a lot of egos involved here, and let alone Danny and The Rock and her as the first, co-owner of a major sports. All these different kind of platitudes they have on this. They just feels like there's a lot of different chefs in this kitchen.
There are a lot of chefs. I mean, we all saw Daryl Moose Johnson's comment to Sports Business Journal about just being perplexed that the XFL got higher ratings because, in his opinion, USFL had better football. I don't know. I mean, I leave that to you if that's true or not. USFL had better football. I mean, one of the reasons, though, it's so tough for these spring leagues to succeed is it's hard at the skill positions, particularly quarterback. To put on a compelling product there. I mean, you look at the NFL, there are teams in the NFL that don't have a good quarterback. There's only so many great quarterbacks that can go around. I mean, I know there's hundreds of them coming out of college every year, but it's an interesting sport that way, that it's so contingent on one position, making it a watchable product. I mean, I'm a long-suffering New York Jets fan, and Zach Wilson's performance on Monday night notwithstanding, when he plays, it's all but unwatchable.
Yeah, well, I don't think Daniel Jones would have a place in the XFL or the USFL either right now. Speaking of that, in terms of kind of timeline here, so they say, okay, we're going to go through regulatory processes. Like I lived politics for a long time when I was in local news. Roundabout story: Kevin McCarthy was actually like from Bakersfield, where that was the first job I had. So I followed Kevin McCarthy's career kind of like this entire way, but like. We have this government shutdown and then we're delaying it. Like in terms of the regulatory process that this would have to go through, were you surprised? On what hurdles or what things should we be expecting here? Because like we're dummies here as spring.
Well, any merger, in any corporate, it's a corporate merger. There's two corporations will undergo antitrust regulatory scrutiny if it's in the same market, if it provides the same services. I can't imagine that the Justice Department is going to have any kind of problem with this. There's barely been a market for spring football. It's barely existed. There's been so many cases we just discussed where they went out of business. So, I mean, anything's possible, but I think that's the regulatory language you're referring to in the press release. That's just checking a box.
So then and we'll wind this down here, but that begs back to then. So, the messaging of all this from the beginning was we're intending to merge unless regulatory things stop us. We're acting on our own accord unless the merger doesn't happen. But if you're saying, hey, like the regulatory stuff maybe probably isn't an issue. It is more than just the egos at play here and trying to get the details. Like, are they using that as an excuse? That's my point. Like, hey,
well,
we got to.
They're not going to put in a press release. Anytime you bring two companies together, there's massive egos involved, and that we can always become narcissistic and refuse to merge. I don't think you'll see that. So, and I think any corporate merger that's announced or the intent when they put out intended to merge, it's because it was leaked out, like we had in this case. It's almost boilerplate to say pending regulatory approval. You'll see that whether it's two banks merging or two oil companies merging, it's always that. Now, there's only two competitors. There's only really two producers of spring football in the United States. So you could theoretically say there's an antitrust concern. It's just that given the history here and that for large periods of time there were no platforms for spring football, I just don't see the Justice Department paying much attention to this.
Does it strike you that their press release last week was a direct kind of whatever of the Axios report, and this probably wouldn't have come out right now otherwise?
Yeah, usually companies in the midst of negotiations don't like to publicize it. They don't want to. They're not going to say, "Hey, everyone, guess what? We're secretly in negotiations to merge these two spring football, these two companies." Axios broke the story, and they obviously took a while to get their public relations strategy down because it took a week to put out that statement, but they put out the statement.
But we thought I have the other interview on this episode, but it wasn't just one because it was the official press release. USFL had a letter to its players. The USFL Players Association had a separate letter to its players. Both season ticket holder people if you were a season ticket holder of the XFL or the USFL, you got a different letter. So there's still it took them a week, and it still was a very diversified messaging approach. Yeah,
there's two kitchens right now, and there's different cooks in each kitchen. So they're trying to figure out how to put those kitchens together and who's going to be the lead chef. So is it going to? It's going to be Russ Brandon? Is it going to be Moose Johnston? We don't know who's going to actually run the day-to-day of this. What are they calling it? The National Spring Football League? Is that the new name?
Well, So that was the whole. I actually for a brief period of time held the trademark to that. I trademarked it as a joke because that was the holding company that they were using to get a lot of the trademarks back a couple years ago. So I have a hat somewhere that says National Spring Football League on it that I printed out. But my last question for you, do you see this working? You looking at the ratings, and we've had Ben Fisher on and talking. Is this even relevant if you're hitting certain things? Are you even making a mark on on the public kind of awareness? Do you see whatever this ends up being called, 16 teams, 12 teams, whatever, as a business philosophy? Do you feel like this is going to work?
I think there is a market for it. Especially with the streaming universe we're in and entering, and with sports gambling now. That's one factor that when all those other spring leagues we talked about, there wasn't sports gambling. So there's intense interest up from gamblers to bet on just about anything, and there'll be value in the data, the league selling the data and selling gambling sponsorships and things of that nature. I think the NFL pulls in, I think the latest was $130 million just off gambling sponsorships. And that's not including the data deal they have with Genius Sports. So, it's a money area for them. And with so many outlets looking for content, whether it's ESPN Plus or Peacock or you name it, it's a different ecosystem than there was 5-10 years ago. So I think there is a market for it. Clearly, a lot of these players some of them are ending up on the back ends of NFL rosters. And so the NFL has been more involved with these two leagues than in past spring leagues. So I'm not saying there's going to be a formal affiliation, but I think there's an openness that the NFL would work with a merged USFL XFL.
Are we thinking weeks, months here for this regulatory process?
Well,
I know you're not. I know
there has to be a formal merger first. Announcement. They have to agree to merge. You wouldn't have regulatory approvals or processes until there's a deal submitted to the Justice Department. So there's no regulatory process at the moment until they announce. It's not just intend to merge, but we've reached a merger agreement. They have to put out a release saying we've agreed to merge, and then that's pending regulatory approval as well.
Okay, so that's interesting. So so that goes backwards. I think of a lot of people are thinking. Like right now, I think people are thinking we're waiting on the Justice Department. You're saying we're actually waiting on them to get all this hammered out before we actually go forward with that.
Well, when you say intend to merge, it's saying that there's still deal points that have to be negotiated. That's as I understand. I've always understand those statements. So usually they'll put out we've agreed to merge. Agreed to merge is what you're looking for, not intend to merge. And when they're getting together to negotiate, they're intending to negotiate a merger. Then they negotiate the merger and they've agreed to merge. That's how I understand. I could be wrong, but my understanding is intend and agreed are two different things.
Correct. So that's interesting. So because people are worried, and like I said, the shutdown or whatever. Like, I mean, we still might be 2 months from them even figuring out what they want to do before we even have to. I mean, that might not even be a concern at all.
I mean, remember the Live Golf, PGA Golf. They've still not reached a merger agreement. That's not necessarily going to happen. They announced their intention to merge in, I think it was early June, and they still don't have a formal merger agreement. They put the deadline on that as December 31st. So that's their deadline, but they can always push that back. But that golf merger is not even been submitted to the Justice Department. Everyone's talking about it. There's committees, congressional committees looking at it. The Justice Department, I think, has indicated they're going to take a look at it, but there's no formal merger right now.
That's interesting. All right. Well, Dan, I appreciate it. Interesting stuff. We'll keep you in the loop here, and just keep this on your periphery. Maybe you can fly back in here and give us some insights here moving on. But I appreciate your time. Good luck with everything. It means a lot you taking the time to come on.
Thanks a lot.
Well, in a world where the rated R superstar Adam Copeland, because we can't call him Edge, debuted in AEW, in a world where that didn't happen, I imagine the USFL XFL merger is still the biggest news here. Greg Parks, XFL board, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. You can call him Edge. I'm sure that's fine. I don't think the lawyers will come after you, but AEW, that's another story.
I will say I this week perused the GoDaddy.com listings and found that NSFL board, NSFL newsroom, and the NSFL news hub were all taken. So at least everybody managing all these properties doing their due diligence. Greg, we'll get into all this. I have your article, the devil's in the details, XFLboard.com. I wanted to talk with you about that. But to me, I think the episode is going to be called it's just business as usual, but it doesn't it's so weird. So, USFL now we have free agency. We got guys moving, whatever, historic, first time ever free agency, spring football. XFL, hey, we got our showcase coming up this weekend. Business as usual, but it's not, because you just announced last week that you're intending to merge. What do you make of it? It seems I'm very confused. I did tweet out the Will Ferrell from Zoolander. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
Yeah, it's still, in the processing phase, I guess, in my own mind, because you're right. People are acting, and for a lot of the lower level folks, the folks at the team level, the folks who are running social media, it is business as usual, because they're not involved. They have to treat it as business as usual because they're not involved in the conversation. They're not privy to, based on all reporting, they're not privy to anything that's going on over their head. So they kind of have to operate as business as usual, which is kind of weird because, you have the poor Vegas Vipers people running social media, and it's they're not going to have a team in this new league if it goes through. I mean, there's just no, in all of the incarnations that you see, the Vegas Vipers are not one of them. So, maybe holding out hope that the merger doesn't go through and the XFL plays in 2024 and they do relocate the Vegas franchise to wherever in the continental United States. So, business as usual in terms of that. And I tweeted this out maybe last week. It certainly feels like the USFL is doing more business as usual than the XFL is. We can maybe get into that a little later, but I mean, It's just weird, man. It's weird.
Well, it's weird because, like, so obviously we know there is contention between these leagues, at least, publicly, I would say, from the USFL with the, the ads they've run. I get the emails every week, real football for real fans this weekend. XFL, they obviously know what's going on. They try to, I think, do a better job of not publicly, it's kind of the Vince McMahon of, speaking wrestling, like, well, we're not going to acknowledge, we don't need to acknowledge our competition. But it almost feels like right now, we have this out. And so there's this huge elephant that's not even like in the corner anymore. Like, this is existing in the world. But yet both leagues seem to be like, well, we're outdoing you with how we're like, we don't even care about the merger. Like, we got free agency coming. Like, we don't even care. And the XFL, like, who is running this showcase? Like, who is going to this showcase? I got the email. Okay, Terrell Buckley's going to be, he's going to be there. And I'm even surprised. Like, why would you even put Terrell Buckley there where anybody in there worth their weight in anything is going to ask about, hey, what's going on with this? And they'll probably tell the reporters, like, you can't ask only, but like, so we're still doing media events, but we're not. It just, I don't know, the whole like order of events here. I don't know if this got leaked early. It just feels, like you said, it feels very strange.
I guess they kind of have to go forward with the showcase because they had all these people signing up and giving their money. So it's probably easier to just go forward with the showcase. And, if nothing else, they have this list of players, if the merger does go through, that the people running the showcase can share with the USFL and the XFL. It's run at the league level, so the league is collecting all the data on these players. So if there is a merger, that would just be shared not only amongst the XFL coaches, but the USFL coaches as well, if they're interested in signing any of these players. Certainly with one of the showcases being in Orlando, you would expect Terrell Buckley to be there because he coaches the Orlando team. But
what if there's no Orlando team? I mean, what if like...
But that's the business as usual part of it, I guess. The media aspect is interesting, and I saw a couple tweets today about the showcase, and it's really going to be interesting to me to see how much coverage this showcase gets across XFL social networks. Do they just kind of bury it and not acknowledge it very much, save for maybe a few clips here or there? Or do they really treat it as business as usual and give off the same vibe that they gave for the showcases over the summer? And then the other aspect is the local media aspect of it. Is there going to be media here at all? And if so, how transparent is the league going to be in allowing even questions to be asked? We know they're not going to be transparent in answering questions. We know Terrell Buckley's going to say, if he's asked, look, I don't know what's going on, I'm just treating it business as usual, whatever like that. Because that's all he really can say. That's all any of the coaches or DPPs can say, or anyone else involved with the league at this level. Will be interesting to see if Danny Garcia is there. We know Orlando is her city. It's her hometown. She was reportedly one of the ones that pushed for the Orlando franchise. So you would expect maybe her to be there if this was a normal course of business. But, the roles of Danny Garcia and Dwayne Johnson are still kind of up in the air for this merged league. So depending on the certainty of the merger, how far into this is Danny Garcia going to go into the business as usual aspect? I mean, there's just so much. There's so much, and yet there's so little, Reed. I think that's the hard part that I have trouble with is we know so little. There's zero details about the actual merger, and that's why I wrote the column "The Devil's in the Details." There are a lot of questions that the answers to will, I think, for a lot of fans, guide how invested they are in this merged league. And so there's a lot we don't know. We've had reporting. We've had some conflicting reporting out there about everything, basically. So I've kind of tried to just tune things out as much as I can. And then you have, the business as usual aspect of it, where USFL's knee deep in free agency. You're seeing teams sign players and it being announced on social media. While, the XFL teams have not added a player since September 5th. The draft that was reported to, not reported, but one of the DPPs talked about it on the XFL behind the scenes combine as October 4th. And then we got reporting that it was pushed back to TBA, which is not a great sign, So the USFL seems like they are going more in the business as usual than the XFL, where it's like they're kind of tiptoeing into things. And, and the whole thing is the 2024 versus 2025, right? What's the drop dead date for the merged league to actually kick off in 2024? There has to be an agreed upon date where if we don't get, whether it's the regulatory process completed or whatever the case may be by this date, then either the merger's off or they wait until 2025. And so, of course, we don't know that. So we're kind of in the dark, feeling around a little bit with all these dates and all this speculation. And, I've quite frankly tried to keep my mouth shut as much as I can on social media about it, because I don't know that there's a whole lot to be gained with the endless speculation on this, other than to just fill airtime and fill word counts and things like that. And I'm not really interested in doing all that. But, I think it does have to be talked about, because it is a major impact on both of these leagues that a lot of people cover and a lot of people care about.
Well, and that's kind of where I want this conversation to be focused today. I think we're on the same page. Like, I've had more DMs like, do you think it's 8 teams or 9 teams or 10 teams? Or I think we're going to do 3 conferences, or we're going to like that. Everyone's got, what was it? Mark Thompson tweeted out from the USFL, like, oh, just Mark Thompson. No, like but to me, I want to focus on, because I think for at least the XFL, it's my belief, is doing demonstrable damage right now. It feels to me like you said, USFL, we're going forward with business. XFL, kind of similar to last time with the CFL. Like, hey, do you guys want to talk? Like, I've watched this league for the last, however long now, 3 years to build up to this. And I saw them purely focusing just on a single league launch, almost not be able to do it, right? With all the Vegas stuff and with the schedule and everything. Like, we got there, but it was really really down to the wire, right? We're like, you're the teacher, right? Like the kid, we're finishing the papers, you're collecting the notes, right? You're coming around. Like, it is, and tell me if you're wrong, it is my belief, I don't think the XFL can both figure out this merger and also like get their own season 2 ready to go. Like, I just don't think that there's enough. Am I wrong there? Well,
it sure doesn't feel like it. I mean, you hope naturally that they're going to be able to do that. Maybe the draft goes off without a hitch in November, and maybe, they have, they'll announce the new Vegas location and it'll surprise us all. I think the frustrating thing for me, as not only a fan, but as someone who covers this league, you talked about the lead up, 2.5 years. From the time they purchased this league out of bankruptcy to the time they kicked off, they had 2.5 years. And they were making mistakes that everybody saw coming. The Vegas situation. The big one, right? The Vegas situation. There were a couple of other more minor ones, but that's certainly the big one. The marketing was another big one. Like, everybody was saying, what's going? I wrote numerous columns on, what's the deal with the marketing, basically. And then, they're somehow surprised at the end of the year when they don't hit their expectations. It's like, well, how did you not see this coming? And then, to have, again, I go back to the 2.5 years. You had 2.5 years to put this together, and you can't survive past year 1. And now we hear all this stuff. Mike Mitchell was on the XFL Insider podcast saying, yeah, they have money set aside for year 2, year 3, year 4. I mean, do they? Like, I question that. Like, I really doesn't feel like that's the case. I don't know, but I certainly trust Mike's reporting, but what the XFL is doing kind of tells me different. So I don't know.
Yeah, it feels to me, and you, I believe, have the report on the XFL board. You probably, I don't know if the time is nebulous right now, but sometime before today, where the quote from the league was like, "This is a lot harder than we thought it was going to be." Right. And to me now, it definitely echoes that, where man, we made it through year one. Like this was a lot harder. We didn't make as much money, the profits, whatever. I mean, I've been gone back and forth with, the comments on our YouTube last week was just, horrendous, and people were down, and we feel like, the XFL brand is going away, or we've done all this stuff. And I said, like, I do my own small business. I took out a loan for $15,000. I bought a camera. I had a whole little list of everything, and I lost money, and now I make money. Right. And that's how a business works. And it's insane to me that, like, so the XFL, Redbird, all of this, like, we made it through year one. And what was our solution? We're going to lay off enough people to justify the losses we had in year one. And we're going to kind of vigor this to get it, you're always going to lose money. You're not in the USFL lost money, the $60 million. USFL lost money too. They can write it off on Fox and Fox social media. Like everybody lost money, but the fact that Redbird, like, did they lose more than they thought, or did they not expect? Like, that's what I don't get. It's like, well, we're just going to lay out. Like, you can only trim so much fat here to move forward, and it does feel like, hey, we're just not equipped for this, or we're not interested in this anymore.
And one of the things that Vince McMahon talked about way back in 2001, when things had gone south for the league, and he used the term brand building. And you have to put some equity into these brands. You're not going to have 20,000 show up in an Orlando Guardians game overnight. I mean, St. Louis is the outlier. You cannot have that expectation for every city. So you have to build that brand over a period of time. These fans are not going to show up overnight because The Rock is part of the league. They're not going to show up overnight because Danny Garcia is the first woman sports owner. That might get you in the door in certain ways. And I look at the CNN interview that they had on Anderson Cooper's show a couple Sundays ago, where they interviewed The Rock and Danny Garcia about safety in pro football. They didn't give that spot to the USFL, and they could have very easily done that. Danny Garcia and Dwayne Johnson get them in the door for things like that. But that's not going to draw fans to watch the games every week. That's not going to draw fans to spend money on the league, whether it's merchandise or whether it's going to games. It's going to take a while to build the brand, to build up players that you can, advertise and market. And you've got some players after year one. You've got AJ McCarron. Although he's now with the Cincinnati Bengals. You've got guys like Ja'Cour Pearson, who are really interesting stories that you can begin to build after year one. And it just seems like it's the same old story. There isn't that patience. You have to be willing to lose money when you start a league like this. And you have now. The St. Louis Battlehawks will be going into the third version of a league that's existed, and that's just, you can't build fan bases that way. You cannot sustain success that way. And so, I just, it's hard for me to understand the thinking. And I get that over the long term, the XFL and USFL is probably going to do more damage than good as two separate brands. I think, whether we wanted to admit it or not, over the long term, a merger was maybe the best case scenario, with one purchasing the other as probably the next step down, and then neither existing as the worst case scenario. But I'm surprised that, like everybody seemingly, I'm surprised that it happened so soon. And I think it would have been better to be able to build some equity in these leagues before you merged. I mean, okay, maybe the Birmingham Stallions and the St. Louis Battlehawks is a dream match, but it's for a very, very small portion of fans who even know those teams exist. Whereas if you were able to build those brands for a few years and establish those brands, maybe 3-4 years down the line, people start looking forward to it. But after year two of a league and after year one of a league, I mean, that's not going to be on anyone's radar.
They've been putting out, and we've had press releases like the St. Louis Battlehawks, like they're doing suites, whatever for the thing. And, someone takes, well, how are they doing it? I'm like, well, okay, if you're trusting Neil Stratton's report, there's going to be hubs. St. Louis will be a hub, conceivably, right? I can buy the suite, whatever. But in my head, I'm like, who are buying these tickets right now? Why would you buy any of these tickets right now? Like, I don't understand. Like,
That's the business as usual part, though, right? Because you can't completely hit pause, because if the merger doesn't go through and all of a sudden you have to play in 2024, you're going to be caught with your pants down. So in certain aspects, like at the team level where you're selling tickets, and who knows what's going to happen to those tickets, for the Orlando Guardians, if the merger goes through and they don't have a team in 2024, that's going to be a mess trying to get the money back to the fans and things like that. But, those at the team level certainly have to operate as if they're going to have a team in 2024 and it's going to be the XFL.
That would be very, very difficult for me.
It's very messy. It's very messy, and it's not, I don't think it's the ideal scenario, but I don't know what a better scenario is. And I had never thought of needing regulatory approval. Like two companies of this size, I didn't think would need to go through that process. So that has certainly slowed things down, but I just don't know. It's unfortunate for a lot of these people whose jobs are truly up in the air and who probably go to work every day not knowing if they're going to have a job in 3 to 6 months. But I don't know how you operate otherwise.
No, I know. And that's why when the USFL, and they put that out, I said, you need, I understand it's business as usual, but you need a unified voice. And everyone, because they did that. Well, I think that's a terrible idea. This is because now you're asking these fans that have taken the leap of faith from 2020, and then you come back, and then you push, and then we delay, and then we do the CFL, and then we come back, and then now you're asking for this other delay again, and it's like you're living in purgatory here. And I just, like you said, in terms of establishing these brand identities, I mean, I will tell you, we have 4 season tickets for the Sea Dragons, they're out, they're done. They're like, why and we're paid up, but they're like, well, why? What are we doing here? Are we, the only thing that's enjoyable about this is going to the, 5 home games we're allowed to go to. God forbid if they're not, opposite Kraken or anything else going on work related on a Thursday night when our games were I don't know. To me, and I had the analogy before, it feels like with this, this ramp up and everything, and everything's too hard. It feels like you're okay. It's it's a new year, new year, new me. I'm going to lose 15 pounds. And it's the second week of January, and it's Bill, you couldn't even get through the first month. What are we doing here? I don't know. It feels like this was a very quick about face. Because like you said, I do USFL, their marketing message is pretty clear on their season ticket holders. We went through all those. If you haven't listened to the episode, Andy and I went through all that stuff. I mean, hey, we're moving forward. This is what we're doing. If you need a refund, we'll process that. To me, it seems very clear what the USFL at least is trying to kind of manage this.
Yeah, I do think the USFL has handled this better. And peripherally speaking, I'm only seeing what's going on social media. I'm not seeing what's going on behind the scenes, but it certainly feels like the USFL is handling this in a better way than the XFL is. You had XFL social media go dark for 3 days after the USFL XFL merger was announced, and you're kind of throwing your hands up what exactly is going on here? And now you have them, I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know if it's just to go dark, or I don't know if it's to pretend that it's not happening. I don't think, like I said, I don't think there's a good answer, but I just feel like it should be more cohesive, whether it's internally with the XFL or in partnership with the USFL. There should feel like more cohesion than there really is. And I don't know if there's things going on behind the scenes that are, stopping that from happening, but it's certainly not, the understatement of the year, maybe certainly not the offseason I expected from the XFL. When we talked and we did the kind of post-mortem after the year, it's there are certain aspects they can do better. They saw what worked, they saw what didn't. They can use that data and use that information and use that feedback to prepare for year 2, to do better marketing in these areas, to do other things like that. And they haven't done any of that. They just haven't. And so I don't know. Maybe they're putting all their chips in the center of the table for a merger and hoping that goes through. And because if that merger doesn't go through, I'm not convinced there's an XFL 2024. That's kind of where I am right now. And it's pretty sad to say that, but based on everything I'm seeing, and I don't have any inside information to back that up, but just based on the USFL reaction to this and how they're going forward versus the XFL reaction to this merger and how they're allegedly going forward, I'm not super confident that there's even going to be a 2024 if this merger fails.
No, and I would echo that. John Lewis, he has the John Lewis Sports YouTube channel. He had hey, what are your hot takes? He did a predictions video, which I thought was very well done. And that's what I said. I said, if this doesn't go through, I think USFL moves right along, and I think the XFL, whether you want to say folds or does whatever, but it certainly, everything that's happened here in the last 2 weeks, and I know the Axios report. I would love to know, how early did that get out? Do we want to do this right now? Because it's a weird time anyway. We got the showcases and the draft, and like you said, in terms of getting this unification, even just getting the press releases. Last week we had the official press release. We had the USFL letter to the fans. We had the USFL PA letter to their players. We had the XFL season ticket holder letter. We had the USFL season ticket holder letter. Russ put out, or I guess it was leaked, but Russ had his letter to the staff. And then Danny and the Rock Boats just retweeted, more work to be done. But it's you had 7 different messages coming out from I just don't understand how that's possible.
And yet it is so. It's messy, I think, doesn't begin to describe what this process is like. And, you mentioned the report on, I believe it was Axios, and who leaked it, right? There's a very small number of people because, as Mike has reported, only the very tippy top know about this, and we're in negotiations. So there's a very finite number of people that this could have come from. And, the report was very both sidesy. It didn't feel like, this must have come from the USFL. It didn't echo James Larson's report that said Redbird went to the USFL to ask for this. It didn't feel like it came from the XFL side where, you would have thought, okay, the USFL approached us or whatever like that. It was a merger of equals and things like that. So it almost felt like they wanted it to get out, but then both leagues' reaction to it makes you think they weren't prepared. So I don't know. Maybe that's just another thing that's going to keep us chasing our tail, is wondering who leaked it, and does it even really matter? I don't know. But it is interesting that came out, and it didn't really seem to give a signal as to what side may have tipped them off.
I got one last comment here, and I want to hit your article, just if there's anything specific. Not again, I don't want to talk this is going to be 12 teams, but just from kind of the bigger picture. I was just thinking about this when we were talking about the ticket holders and everything. I know Pat Ruffino has said this a bunch. Obviously, he covers the St. Louis market. He knew there were so many season ticket holder or former maybe 2020 season ticket holders or interested parties in 2023, right? That I'm going to wait. Let the Battlehawks come back a year, right? Let's go through this.
Absolutely.
It was the same with the Dragons. And then I'll buy in. Show me that this is, and you're just pulling the rug out again. I mean, it's just really hard. Anything else on that? And then I want to just make sure we hit on your article here.
No, I think you're absolutely right. It's unfortunate, and it does hurt the brand. It hurts the brand of every one of these teams. It hurts the markets that you're trying to win over teams or win over fans in. It does so much damage when you do this over and over again. And I get that it wasn't Redbird in 2020. It wasn't Danny Garcia and Dwayne Johnson in 2020, but the effect is still the same.
So here, you're talking a lot of details coming out with all this. We're talking, what was kind of your big, because I enjoy what you said, I didn't want to get into the nuts and bolts, but I got to put something out here. I mean, what did you want to kind of express with this article? The devil's in the details, and many different things to kind of work through here.
Yeah, like I said, there's a reason that I haven't flooded the market with opinion pieces over the last 2 weeks. I can't. I don't have the strength for it. I don't have the energy for it. It's just there's so much you don't know that you could speculate, and people have done it. And I don't feel like I need to add more speculation to what's already out there. I don't think that benefits anyone. In fact, it probably just makes people more anxious. So I want to avoid that as much as possible. But the point of this article was, and it was kind of it was kind of spurred on by something that you posted on Twitter in reaction to the Neil Stratton report about the hubs, where you said, look, if this is the situation, I can't envision myself covering it. And I know Evan for XFL News Hub has basically said the same thing. And so, I've kind of tried to keep my powder dry on not saying, not going down the road of, okay, if this happens, then I'm out. But if this happens, I'm in. And if, I don't want to get into the what ifs, because a lot of it for me is feel. Like when they lay everything out on the table, how do I feel about it? What's my feeling? Is there more on the scale of, I like this, versus on the scale of, I can't support that? Like, how does that scale up? So it's really going to depend for me. But this article kind of looks at some of those pieces, some of those details that we don't know yet. But I think that some of these details will really tip the scale for people, whether it's the hub versus no hub. For some people, it's not going to matter. The people who maybe watch the USFL and the XFL, they're already used to watching hubs in the USFL, so they're fine with it. But there are people who even watch the USFL, and they're saying, if this is a merged league, I'm expecting something bigger. I'm expecting something better. I'm expecting to improve upon what we're getting already. And if it's not that, if it's just the status quo, I'm not interested. You have the management structure. What's the management structure going to be like? What's the ownership structure going to be like? I think that could be a tipping point for some people, especially you've got a lot of anti-Danny Garcia and anti-Dwayne Johnson people out there. And so if they're still heavily involved, and if they are still the face of this league, I think that's going to turn some people off. You have the structure of the teams. You have, are the teams going to keep the play? Is AJ McCarron going to get to stay in St. Louis, or are they going to just start redrafting people again? Are you going to be on the third incarnation of a St. Louis Battlehawks team? Are you going to be drafting a third brand new St. Louis Battlehawks team? That would be a mistake to me. And so I think that could be something where people look and say, if we're starting from scratch again from the player point of view, I think some people are going to be out. And then the franchises, what do the franchises look like? What teams are kept from the USFL versus from the XFL? And obviously, if you're in the home market of, say, the Seattle Sea Dragons or Seattle Dragons, I don't even know what they're called anymore. I'm on such a rant. The Sea Dragons, right? So, I mean, if you're in the Seattle market and your team either isn't playing or plays in a hub in Arlington, like, that's going to be a huge factor for you. Or if you're, obviously a Vegas fan and you don't have a team anymore, like, that's going to be a factor for you and whether or not you follow this league. So my goal with this article was to kind of put together, not to speculate on these points, but just to say that these are some points that current fans of either the XFL or USFL or both, are going to look at when they're deciding whether or not to follow this new league. And for some people, these are going to be the tipping point decisions for them.
Yeah, to me, and that's kind of where I'm at. Like, it's been tiring just in general, all this, and like, we've done now weekly recaps for every XFL game, USFL game, and now CFL since February, what was the kickoff, the 14th, 15th, whatever. Like, it's been busy, and that's fine, and it's enjoyable, and obviously I'm blessed to kind of work from home and be able to do all this stuff. But like, my interest in covering the XFL is not whether or not there is a Seattle team. I really don't. CFL doesn't have, I call the BC Lions American CFL team, but I have to fundamentally believe in the vision. I've been very vocal on here. I don't believe in the USFL business model. I don't like the way that they operate in terms of, hey, it's football, man. Like, you're going to just watch. And, obviously, like, we bought into the Vince McMahon vision and Oliver Luck and all of that. And then Danny and The Rock, I think, kind of took that to another level of like, this is what we believe in. You've never gotten that. I know Moose has been decent about like, we really want opportunities for players, but you never got that same whatever. And I have to kind of believe in the vision model of this. And I don't think that, going to hubs and saying like, if you ask a USFL fan, what is working from the USFL business model, save for just, hey, we outlasted the XFL. Like, at this point, I don't know. Is there, like, what more pro do you have? Like, well, hey, we outlasted. Like, that means our business model is better. Yeah, but like, what have you accomplished in that? I mean, you've gone from 1 hub to 4. Like, that's where I'm kind of at a sticking point here. Like, I don't see if in another 2 years this vision plan out.
To me, the hub is not a growth model. There's not a lot of room for growth for the league with the hubs. Sure, your goal could be to sell off these franchises and let Philadelphia play in Philadelphia, but what business person is going to buy a franchise in which they have no idea how it's going to perform in the home market? They have no idea how many fans they're going to be able to draw. They have no idea what kind of advertising they can get in that city because they're not there. So if your goal is to sell off these franchises, who is going to be interested in these franchises that are not in their home cities? And so I just don't see the growth part of this model. We hear, eventually they're going to get out. Eventually they're going to get out into these cities. Well, Fox is $1 billion corporation. They certainly have enough money to put these teams in these cities if they chose to. So I'm not sure what they're looking for. I'm not sure what financial markers they're looking to hit to where they can say, now we can play in Philadelphia. Now we can play in New Jersey. Now we can play in Houston. I don't know what they're looking at. And, the hub model was supposed to be temporary. It's supposed to be 1 or 2 years. And now we're going into year 3 in the hubs with no sign of an end to that. And kind of like you, I just don't have any interest in watching that kind of football. God bless you if you do. Like, I don't hold any ill will to the people who enjoy football for what's played in between the lines. And if that's something you want to support, then all the more power to you. But we all each have to make individual decisions about how we spend our time and money. And those decisions are going to be different based on, what's going on in your life and what your interests are and things like that. And, I just don't really have any interest in devoting my time necessarily to that. Again, they could blow me away. They could say, look, we're going to play in hubs, this merged model. We're going to play in hubs, but we're going to do this, 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 and this, and this. And I could be like, okay, maybe that's enough to get. And that's why I don't want to say, if they're doing this, I'm out. Or if they're doing this, I'm in. Like, I want to see the whole package. I wanted to see what my own feeling is about it, like internally, that indescribable, am I really attracted to this idea or not? And because, for anyone who's read my work, and so thank you so much if you have, but like, that I don't do, there are no half measures for me. Like, and I have the Excel spreadsheets to prove it. Like, if I'm going to dedicate myself to covering a league, I'm going to jump in with both feet, and I'm going to leave no stone unturned. And in order to do that, I have to be passionate about it. I have to believe, as you said, I think you put it very nicely, I have to believe in the vision that they're selling me. And if I don't believe in that, I'm not going to cover it just to say I can cover it. I'm not going to cover it just because I feel an obligation to spring football or whatever the case may be. I'm going to go outside and touch grass instead. I don't know. But like, I don't feel like I have that. I'm chained to the idea of spring football in any form.
Yeah, it's just hard. Like, I just, and like, well, what if they do like 6, you talk about all these, different things they do. Like, what if they do like 6 hubs and they have 6 home teams and they have traveling teams? That, like, I don't like,
and that's where you get into the endless what ifs. And then once you go down that path, it's like, you can create any number of incarnations of what this league looks like. And I mean, what you're doing nothing but stressing yourself.
Well, and I don't know if any of those are that appealing to what we saw last year, which was the XFL actually playing its markets, right? I mean,
right.
Like, any other combination of anything to me is a step back of what we did last year. And that was still obviously flawed in its execution.
Yes. And it would be interesting to see how XFL leadership, even if it's still Danny and Dwayne, sell, because their big selling point was, look, we're going to be in our home markets. That was whenever they were asked about the USFL.
I asked Danny Garcia. That's what she said.
Yes. Whenever they were asked about the USFL, they would say, look, we're focused on our own deal. and their advantage was playing in their home markets. If they merge with the USFL and now you've got the hubs where they're not in their home markets, I mean, that's a definite tail between your legs feeling that I, as a fan, would get from ownership. And so, it would be hard to support that. Like, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not, putting my cards on the table right now just because I don't think that's useful. But I think that would be, I would love to hear the XFL side of this ownership sell the XFL fans who've already been through a season where these teams played in their home markets on the benefits of hub football now.
My last point here, we'll get out of here. I know it's late for you on the East Coast. I remember vividly when I'm sure it was Wade probably had the thing on PW Torch. Hey, the XFL rumored XFL City is for the 2020 launch, and I remember I was sitting there and I was filming the Nutcracker because I was doing that at the time, and I remember texting Paul and Michael, my two still XFL season ticket holders now. I mean, we're going ballistic. Oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. And because this is going to crash and burn. Like, this is never going to work. Vince is going to come back and do all this stuff. But then over the course of, I guess it would have been 2018, over the course of the 2 years, I'm all in, bought in, and it's just now to be, 3 years removed from that. And we're doing this stuff. It's very different from that initial, whatever link I saw on the PW tours, very, very different. And I just feel like this is a different point. And I don't know at what point is it, are you the ex bastard child times 15? And I don't know what this is anymore. It's not kind of what I envisioned to begin with.
Yeah. And I sat here and talked to you about that, during the XFL season. And I told you how tiring it was to be a fan of a league like this where you're living and dying by TV ratings. You're not knowing, you're investing and you're giving all of your time and effort to covering this league, really not knowing the long-term outlook. And you're just hoping that they do well enough to get to season 2. And then you're hoping they do well enough to get to season 3. And you're hoping they can get a big TV deal out of it or something like that to kind of give you that sustained success. And I talked about how frustrating it was and how just tiring it was to have to be anxious about TV ratings coming out every week and how much more did they draw? How much less did they draw? The sky is falling versus we're walking on sunshine. And once you got through the first season and you saw the interviews that Danny and Dwayne did during the championship week, and they did tons of interviews with print media and with traditional media. And it was okay, they seem to have a good grasp of what's going on here. And they seem to have a good grasp of what they did right. They were very humble. They said, look, this wasn't perfect. We made some mistakes. We're going to correct it going into season 2. And that gave you a little bit of confidence, which lasted all of 2 weeks until they started cutting positions in Vegas. And, then they're doing all this stuff. And now the merger, and it's you kind of throw your hands up and it's come on, get it together here. We're fans, but we can only take so much.
It does, yeah. And that's a perfect way to kind of end the conversation. I just don't take your fans for granted. I get all this and it's a little bit of the ivory tower syndrome and we're figuring all this stuff out. And even this merger stuff, most of the team people, when we got the team ticketing people listening to the show to get information, that's just not a good position to be in. So that's my last. Anything else from you? We'll get out of here. I appreciate it, Greg.
Nope, I'm good.
There you go. Go watch Adam Copeland here and get AEW. I saw it sold 2,000 tickets. Only sold 2,000 tickets for his big debut show or whatever. So Tony Khan and all of that. Always interesting.
Always interesting. You got it, Reed.
Awesome, Greg. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate it making time here late on a Wednesday, working around family commitments and everything else. I appreciate it here. We have Eddie Steele talking CFL. I had to double check week 18 here, flying through the season. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing excellent, brother. It's good to be with you this evening. You've been keeping well?
We've been good. We've been good. Like I said, heading up to the great north here on Friday, doing that. I felt like I got to go. America's CFL team, game of the season, Winnipeg coming in. We'll talk through that matchup as well. But a lot of stakes here. What do you make here? CFL, we're 18 weeks through, almost through the season. What kind of grade the season if you had to from an overall view?
Overall, 30,000 feet above view, I would say the season has been, if I had to put a grade on it, I'd give it a B plus. It's been a very positive season. There's been a ton of excitement. The front runners have been kind of themselves for the whole season, being Toronto, Winnipeg, BC. But with that being said, there's been good games, good action. Even the teams, you look at the Ottawa BC game a couple of weeks ago, the teams that are, the bottom feeders like the Red Blacks, the Elks, they still are putting on exciting games. And ultimately, that's all you can want as a fan, is just to see exciting football. And that's something that the CFL always isn't shy from. They produce some good football, some exciting football. And now that the NFL is in full swing of it, we're a month into that season. It's awesome to see how exciting CFL football is in the fourth quarter compared to NFL football. It's remarkable, man, and I've been a part of those types of games.
I did tweet out. We were watching the Sunday night. I'm trying to remember which night of the week it was. The Chiefs and Jets and Mahomes running and sliding down with minute 50 whatever left. I said, I do agree. We get a lot of this. Oh, like what's real football? We have leagues down here arguing about what's real football. But I do like. I will say, seeing how that game ended, I appreciate the CFL's end of game rules, kind of last 3 minutes. If I had to choose.
Honestly, man, like I've been a part of games where I've been up or down by 17 points with 3 minutes left, and I've lost and won both of those games. I've been on both sides of the coin. It's crazy the way the clock stoppage and everything. It's the best part about it is it really is never over till it's over. You're down 14 with 3 minutes left. It's a game still.
Well, that was like you were just saying, the BC Ottawa game. I mean, here, this historic comeback, and would not be possible without, and also some good special teams. I want to get your thoughts, like so your former Edmonton team here, like we were going to burn it down, and we hate Chris Jones, and then we free Trey Ford, and now and we'll talk about this game, but like the Elks overall, like it feels like there's momentum here now. Am I mistaken?
Yeah, there is absolutely momentum. I mean, going into the last loss they had, because they're on a bye week now this week, they had a 2-game win streak at home. Yeah, as crazy as that sounds, because they had the historic 23-game losing streak at home. It's amazing how football is. You win a few games and just the tides turn. And we're in the business of winning. That's what pro football is. You're paid to win games and nothing else. Doesn't matter about entertaining, regardless. Everything comes when you win games. The fans come when you win games. And we've seen that with the Elks. And I think the change at offensive coordinator was due. Bringing Trey Ford in the mix was due. And he's absolutely given them the spark of juice that they needed in terms of the energy. Is he a polished quarterback? No, absolutely not. There's still lots of improvement there in terms of passing, but what he can do with his legs, he gives the offense life, and that's something that this team has been so desperate for this whole season.
Well, and I don't, and we'll get through this year and kind of see how everything winds up. Like, we got to build him into a star, right? Like, we've kind of seen the Chad Kelly of it all. And I know we had the Victor Quee and all that stuff. Like, I don't know if we're kind of in the holding pattern right now, just kind of getting through. But, I just waiting, to get on here. Morley Scott tweeting out, hey, I got Trey Ford coming on his, the Antlers Up or whatever the show there they do. Like, I want to get Trey, because here's like another Canadian guy, right? I know Dunk will be happy about that. Like, we have this guy that we can put out here. And so I want to see more of that. Like I said, I feel like maybe we're in the holding pattern with Edmonton right now, but going into next year, like this guy needs to be, one of the front and center people.
You're right. The league does need to showcase him. And I mean, shoot, the Elks drafted him in the first round a couple of years ago. So let's showcase this talent. That's funny. You're right about Duncan, the Canadian content, and Marshall Ferguson would be very happy as well. And me as a Canadian, I love it. Mm-hmm. But, put the Canadian aside, man. We need some better quality quarterback play across the league. I don't care what your passport says. We just need some better quarterback play. And I don't think anybody can deny that.
Edmonton here. So coming in, this is kind of a weird game, right? Like Toronto, and it's kind of like a first world problem here. Like, oh, we clinched so early. Like, what are we going to do? But, they sat Chad last week. We saw, friend of the show, Brian Scott, have, not the greatest outing along with Cameron Dukes there. But, like, he's going to play. We have the big 150th anniversary here. Like, what do you make of this? Because it's a weird game for Edmonton. Like, I don't see them winning, but can they kind of, like, win and defeat?
I think, again, Toronto's in that tricky place. And I tweeted this out last week, and I was having this debate with someone, a Winnipeg family member, because Toronto was sitting some key players for this game of the year. And a lot of Winnipeg media, they weren't happy about that, and, saying Toronto's cowardly and then giving excuses, this and that. But Toronto won the war, in my opinion. The fact that they kept that game close. Winnipeg might have won the game in the battle in the short term, but the fact that Toronto kept it so close without having their best players in the game, that sows seeds of doubt. So in terms of the Elks, I don't think you just want to be competitive. The Elks aren't mathematically out of it, but there has to be a lot of help that needs to happen. And whenever you have to depend on other teams, that's never a good position to be in. And for Toronto, I've been in this type of position where you've secured home place. And, honestly, these games don't matter for them. It doesn't matter. The thing about the CFL is you win first place in your division. You have one home playoff game that you got to win at home, and you're in the Grey Cup. Toronto, none of this, it's all irrelevant. And people say that Toronto will be flat, this and that. No, you got to get juiced up for one home game, and that's it. You got to show up for one game, and you're in the Grey Cup. And that's the beauty part about securing first.
So you don't worry, because we've had a lot of debates on our Monday recap shows. You don't worry kind of whatever mishmash of a team we play here through the rest of the season?
No, I don't worry at all. Solely for the fact that in 2015, when we won the Grey Cup, the league did an amazing scheduling job. And they scheduled our bye weeks in the first game of the season and the last game. So we had first place locked up. We had a bye week at the last game of the season, and we had the first bye week of the playoffs. So we didn't have football for 3 weeks. And not only were we fresh as daisies, but if you practice right, you stay prepared. And at the end of the day, all you got to do, it's amazing if you think about it. You show up for one home game. You win one home game, and you're in the Grey Cup. That's what it comes down to when you secure first, So I'm not a big believer in the rust in that, because football at this point in time in a season is more about a fresh body, in my opinion, than anything.
Well, and I think also, like, we're paid adults here, and this is the job we're doing. And, I don't know if certain coaches will be better than others, but I certainly have no qualms of Dinwiddie and staff, like, having them ready to go. But, like, we made the joke about Winnipeg dropping the game to Hamilton going into their bye here, just like they did last year. And, like, it goes both ways. But yeah, I see Toronto being ready to go. And it's, it's a remarkable, like, how impressed are you I know we have the 150th anniversary here. And, like, just historically, it's been a really incredible run for them this year.
It really has been. And it's interesting to see, because if you look at the history for the past, 10, 15 years, Toronto actually wins a lot of Grey Cups. They're notoriously known for being, a franchise that's kind of in poverty. They don't get any fans out, the worst fan attendance in the league easily. But yet every second year they seem to win the Grey Cup, or if not be in it, and here we are back-to-back years, which is kind of the rarity. And they built themselves a good team. They have some good talent over there. It's no fluke that they've come out really where they left off last year from winning the Grey Cup. And I really think that we're going to see a repeat here this year. I really think it's going to be good chances of it.
How excited I know we talked to Edmonton, but just, like, I know we kind of still have the Cornelius ride, and he's on another year, I think, however they want to. And I think the CFL has ways to kind of remedy that if they want to. But, like, what do you, looking forward here, I don't want, Edmonton, not mathematically, whatever, but, like, we have our guy now. Like, we know, like, we got Trey, like, he's our dog going forward. Like, prognosticating into next year, like, are you excited to see where this team goes?
You have to be excited. Chris Jones, love or hate him, the reality is, the defense has played well, and that's what he's known for, is defensive football. The offense, look, I think everybody knows the elephant in the room. Stephen McAdoo, He's well known as one of Chris Jones's best boys. I've had him as a coach, but the offense just wasn't cutting it. You were last in every stat. You make one change at coordinator, and then you make the change at the quarterback simultaneously, and boom, you have some instant success. You win some football games. So if they even come out and run it back with how they're playing the second half, the back nine of the season, if they run that back, they're going to be competitive, and they're going to be right in the mix for a playoff spot next year.
Well, I mean, if they like in retrospective, like if they had put, I can't even speak. Like if you would put Trey Ford in like week 3, I mean, it's a completely different. Like, what did obviously you play with Chris Jones here. Like, what did you make of just kind of this whole debacle all year?
You know what, dude? I got to be honest, man. I was wrong. I was wrong about Trey Ford. I always admit my wrongs. I was wrong about Matthew Betts. I didn't think he was going to be the stud he is. I was wrong about.
He's a friend of the show. Matthew and Trey.
He's a hell of a player, man. But when he was in Edmonton, his first 2 years in Edmonton, after being a first-round pick, he had like 2 sacks or 3 sacks after 2 years. So, but he come out and blossomed as a player. I was wrong there. But with Trey, I had heard the rumblings that everybody said in terms of he wasn't ready and came in kind of out of shape, came in maybe with an attitude problem, this and that. And maybe I bought into some of that too. And I was wrong, man, because they should have played him. I don't care about his conditioning, any of it, because the minute you played him, there was an instant spark and an instant life in that offense that was absolutely putrid and dead. So I was wrong, man.
That's good.
Jones was wrong. Chris Jones was wrong. Chris Jones, because, Chris Jones is out here, and again, I'm a Chris Jones guy, but he's out here, defending the moves of not playing him and defending Cornelius' play, and I'm sitting here, listening to it, agreeing with it to a degree, but at the same time, it ain't adding up to the eye test on the field. It ain't adding up. So I don't know why it took until half of the season to make that move, but, man, I'm glad he did for his job and a lot of other people's jobs.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, we talked like really saved and it completely 180 here, kind of how everything. It was just so weird because we were supposed to have Chris Jones on the media day last year after the season, and he was too busy. So like too many interviews. So he called in the next week, like walking around the streets of LA. He was there drafting one of the Bulls. Was like just had the most delightful conversation with the man, like completely not even what I was expecting. It's like, then you like living through this real time and you're like, what the hell is going on, man? But now like he certainly figured it out. And I don't know, like, I don't think we'll ever, I want the book on like the Trey Ford tell all about like what's going on here. But yeah, we certainly remedied it with enough, but not enough to save the season, but enough time to save his job.
And you never know, man. It's the CFL, so there's life, but it's in other people's hands.
In terms of, like I said, got to be the game of the week here. Winnipeg going into BC. I have lamented many times as a BC fan, like not showing up to certain games this year. And, we get when the Winnipeg and got stomped and then we, what was it? Hamilton came in and stomped us. Like, what do you make of this game? And like, how nervous do I need to be on Friday?
Keeping it real, it's going to be a very unique game. I really think, because you have Winnipeg who's going to try and come out and establish themselves and play that bully brand of football. Get Brady Oliveira going and churn up the run game, and you see their offensive linemen 5-6 yards downfield finishing their blocks. So I think Winnipeg's going to come out and try and do that because Winnipeg, I forget, but Winnipeg smacked BC after BC smacked Winnipeg in Winnipeg, right?
Correct.
So in BC, when they beat Winnipeg in Winnipeg that first time, their defensive line really dominated Winnipeg's offensive line. That was a game Matthew Betts really took over and was a game wrecker himself as a defensive end. So I think with the game going out into BC, Winnipeg's going to try and control things by having that run game really efficient because BC, once that offense gets rolling, and I know firsthand, especially in that dome, and I just saw tonight that they're going to be opening up the second level there. Man, you feel the momentum. You feel it on your back. You really do. Once they start scoring touchdowns in BC place, I don't know what it is, but you can just feel them start to roll, and it's like, oh, here we go again. And boom, BC can score 21 points just like that. And they have the electric offense this year to do so. So I think Winnipeg is going to really try and do their thing in terms of that bully ball. But at the end of the day, I think BC's defensive line, come around to it, is going to win this matchup for BC again. Their defensive line won the matchup last week against the Elks, against a very tough guy in Trey Ford to contain. And you can tell how prepared they were just in their game plan, just by watching them, just by watching how they were pass rushing. And I think BC is going to be just as prepared to come out and stop that run and play that physical brand of football to stuff it right in Winnipeg's face. So I think BC is going to come out on top in this one.
I mean, because this, to me, this is the season. Like we've talked a lot on here. Like, I think BC Place is almost more of a neutral site here. I think Winnipeg. I mean, I can't see BC going into Winnipeg. I've seen this horror story last year, and I saw. I was at the Calgary BC game, and then I couldn't go to Winnipeg. But like I've seen that, and we win the first game, and I mean they killed Calgary. I don't even think it was close, and then they go in, and I know that was the Nathan Rourke and all that, but like at best you're at BC Place where you're not playing on the frozen tundra with all these fans screaming and yelling at you.
It's the truth, man. It's the truth. And again, that I've played those playoff games in Winnipeg, and their offensive line, they do a great job of drafting in Winnipeg and building from the interior out, meaning from the O-line out. They really do. They got some dogs up front, but their main horses, I don't want to say this is the last ride, but we're getting towards the end with Hardrick, Stanley Bryant, at guard, Patty Neufeld. Like there's some of their big dogs are getting up there in age, man. These guys are older than me still playing, so you can see it. The past 5 years, they have been so dominant, but this year you can see a little bit of, I don't want to say regression, but kind of back down to earth in terms of their play because they've been so out-of-worldly for the past 5 years. But you can see it. And BC was the one who really exposed it earlier in the season with their speed. So I think BC is going to, again, go back to rely on their defensive line and the domination, being indoors at that stadium where it's a track event playing there. And, I hate playing in those Winnipeg cold games, man, because their offensive line outside, they just want to lean on you. And they just want to lean on you, and it hurts. And picking yourself up off the turf after 5-6 yard runs, that's no fun.
Going into this season, I know myself and maybe others with Vernon and like, okay, we love Vernon, but sometimes he, it's a little bit of a roller coaster. And I know he had the bad game against Toronto, right? And that was kind of the burn the tape game, but like to me, it's never faltered. Like you're kind of waiting for the shoe to drop. It's never really dropped. Like I think he should be incredibly proud. We're talking about it being an MOP candidacy. And I think, BC wins Winnipeg here and he shows out. I think he's definitely like, could potentially leapfrog Zach Clarissa. Like, have you been impressed with him and what have you made of VA?
Yeah, you really nailed it. Kind of with VA, I'm guilty of it myself. You're kind of always waiting for the shoe to drop and for his play to kind of come back down to that VA play that we've been accustomed to seeing over the years where it's a lot of highs, but then there's quite a bit of lows that follow the highs. Whereas this year, man, he's been so consistent. Every game, I mean, shoot, he's the only guy who's thrown for over 400 yards multiple times, I think. So, like, his play has been lights out, and the play of BC as a whole, as an organization, has truly followed VA this year, and he hasn't faltered. He has been consistent, good, and the fact is they have amazing playmakers out there, so he needs to just go out and play point guard. He doesn't need to go and scramble around the field and then throw it for 30 yards. He needs to play point guard, get it to these studs, and let them make plays.
In terms of the other two games, not as exciting, right? We got the Montreal home, right, against Ottawa here. In terms of Hamilton, we're a playoff team now. I don't know if they feel like a playoff team. We talked, Bo Levi and kind of all of that stuff. Are you impressed with Hamilton? Like, it's kind of been this weird grand experiment this year, and then it kind of, didn't work out.
Man, Hamilton again. I'll touch on the Bo Levi in a minute. Which I'm shocked that I saw that he's practicing here this week again. I'm shocked. But Hamilton's they've been so hard to peg. Of course, injuries they've not helped them at all. I mean, you've gone through how many starting quarterbacks, but Jekyll and Hyde football. Like, they play good, and then they're so off. They have the game in BC, but then they can't show up against poor competition. I just don't know what they are. I thought for sure earlier, or coming up to the midway part of the season, that Coach Steinhauer would definitely be on the hot seat, solely for the fact that they've lived in this kind of life of just average. They've gotten to the Grey Cups. They haven't gotten over the hill. They've been an average team. They haven't been a dominant, 12, 14 win team, always getting into the playoffs. And I thought that maybe he was losing the locker room a little bit. As good of a coach and as good of a man as he is, I mean, everybody's message starts to run stale at a certain point. But, I mean, they're securing themselves a playoff spot again. And the fact is, once you're in the dance, you never know what can happen. With the Grey Cup being in Hamilton, they could catch lightning. They could win a couple of games, and who knows. With Bo, man, you got to respect the career. First and foremost, you got to respect. He's a legend in the game, done it all, competed against him for many years, lost a lot of games against him for many years. He's one of the best to do it. But I personally think, and my eyes don't always lie, but sometimes they do, not always. I don't think that his arm is even close to what it has been. He's had 2 surgeries the past few years, and you could see it in Calgary the past couple of years. His arm strength is just severely declining, hence the reason they chose to move on from him and go Jake Mayer. Secondly, he's been banged up twice this year, serious injuries. I'm shocked that he's practicing, and, maybe he'll catch lightning in a bottle, like I said, but he's thrown 3 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. The last game he played in, he threw for 5 picks. So call me crazy, but there's nothing to get all excited about, because let's just look at the stats alone. If you're going to go to a quarterback who hadn't played since July, and his numbers on the year were 3 picks, 9 touchdowns, I'm not jumping for joy for that. He's my savior. Just keeping it real. Great career, but the numbers are what the numbers are. So,
well, yeah, I mean, he played duty before he got hurt. And not to make light of any injuries, but it is, it's the same thing. And, we're similar parallels, I thought, with the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers, right? And we've got, Hamilton's going all in, but it's the same thing. If Aaron Rodgers thinks you're going to make this miracle comeback next year, or we're going to rehab, you haven't played football in forever. It's the same with Bo here. You haven't played football since July, and you're coming back, and you kind of looked not great before you played the first time.
Exactly. He got hurt in week 1. He got shoved down in the end zone there, I remember, and it wasn't even a tackle or anything. It wasn't it was a pedestrian football hit. And man, I hate injuries because it's the game. Yeah. But it's wow, he popped his hip, did something to his hip doing that, and then came back, looked average, and got hurt again. So look, all I'm saying, and I don't care who you are in football, we all have a shelf life. I don't care who you are. That's the reality of the game. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, he's 33, maybe a worn 33-year-old, but still 33 nonetheless. I mean, he's gone through a lot here.
Yeah, but again, 33, but the thing is, the shoulder was already declining before this season.
Yeah.
So let's keep that into account too. Let's just not look at this season. Calgary, they're very good at determining their future. Typically, I mean, Jake Meyer hasn't worked out like they normally had passed the torch on, but Huffnagel, they're smart guys there in Calgary. And, they benched him a couple of years ago. Jake came in and played well, and then they benched him last year. So, yeah, that's just – I look at how it's happened the past 3 years, and there's a serious decline there.
In terms of the Riders, and they're still we're hanging on to third barely here, kind of in the West. Last year, kind of a doo-doo season, and I know they were I remember at the beginning of the season, the Rough Riders should break the salary cap because of whatever. It's they weren't even in the plan. Not even. But disappointment. I don't know. What do you make of this? I mean, presumably they're going to be a CFL or a playoff team, but for what end here at this point?
Again, they're kind of like I said with Hamilton, Jekyll and Hyde. But man, I would say that they're a lot more Hyde or whoever the not good one is. I think the doctor is the good. Man, Sask has been boy. Talk about Rider Nation. I kind of have pay attention to the pulse a little bit, having played there. Yeah. A fan base is just desperate for a move with the coaching staff. the fan base seems to know what's going on inside the locker room more than the people in the locker room, in terms of Dickey's message getting stale, et cetera, et cetera. But the facts are, I mean, the Riders, they are not putting anything impressive out there in terms of product of play, like at all. And they are two poor Elks flukes away from being a team that's really not even being mentioned with a good team in the CFL this year, because the Elks lost to them by getting stopped 3 times in 3rd and 1, and then the punt return. So those are 2 games that the Elks dropped, and I'm not sitting here as some Elks homer saying, oh, the Elks should have won these games. Look, the Riders won these games. But all year they've been scraping by, and they've just been putting out very average performances, sitting with, I believe, 6 wins right now.
Yeah.
It's been nothing really to write home about. It's been a very average season. Again, with the CFL, you get into the playoffs, you never know. But I think it's a one and done with them in the playoffs this year.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, yeah, because you figure either way, it's BC or Winnipeg going in there and just, they got to go in and just get stomped for that.
It's not good. Honestly, at this point in the year, sorry to cut you off, I think if the Elks were to get in the playoffs, they would pose more competition for BC or Winnipeg.
I agree 100% with that. I agree 100%. In terms of like wholesale changes there, though, because obviously we've had the whole Trevor Harris thing, and I've looked at this and we've talked, and we probably don't even have enough time today to get to the Red Blacks, like deep dive in like what is going on with them and losing the must-win game. But Bob Dice comes in last year, okay, interim and Mazzoli, but all that, and then this year, you get these passes. I just don't know how many passes we get, right, for some of these. And same with Saskatchewan here. I mean, they're not planning to play Jake Dolagallo week 1. Like, do they get a pass from you?
No, they don't get a pass because there's only so many kicks at the can you get. And I mean, I get that's pro sports. We see the recycling of coaches. In reality, coaches is just an old boys club. It's who you know, and guys just get recycled over and over. But look, Dickey's been the head coach now. They've gotten to a couple West Finals with a team that he inherited. It wasn't really a team that he's built. But it's really, you look at the more years that him and OJ had their fingerprints on this, and the more years you get removed from the Chris Jones being in Sask, I mean, the team has kind of gotten worse and worse. And I think the overall sentiment in Rider Nation, you need to listen to the fans. You really do. You can't always listen to the fans, but when they start to speak with their wallets, which they have, you need to be aware of that and be in tune with that. And look, Dickey, I like Dickey a lot. In my opinion, I never thought he was head coach material. Great coach, hell of a coach. But as a head coach, it's a different ball game. Never really thought that's jives with his personality. And look, I think that with a lot of discipline issues that we've seen out of the Riders over the past few years, a lot of attitude issues, a lot of I don't want to say effort issues, but you can just see guys on the field. It's just that I don't give a crap factor, and you can really see it with their body language. Look, maybe Dickey's message is starting to wear on thin ears, and there needs to be changes in JO as well. Their offensive line, better this year, but has been an Achilles heel for the past 3 years. As a former offensive lineman, you think that would be duty number 1 for a GM, but that hasn't been the case.
I will say, yeah, as a Seattle Mariners fan, I've been lived through a very unlistened to. I don't know if you've tried into the baseball talk this week, but very much like management not listening to the fans, coaching not listening. It's been stressful here. Yeah. Last game here, like it's the Columbus Day, right? Canadian Thanksgiving this weekend, right? Is that on the Monday? Is that what we're happening here?
Yeah. You're funny, brother. Yeah, it's on the Monday.
What is this game? I mean, can we flex this game out? Like, can we flex this out of the weekend?
Yeah.
Ottawa at Montreal.
Yeah. Look, I'll be too busy eating. I'll keep it real. Eating and cooking. Because that game, what are we talking about here? I mean, there's nothing to talk about in terms of these two teams. Like, there's nothing to – Montreal's in, and they're playing better football. In Ottawa, it's been shambles. I mean – and I was hopeful for Ottawa. I was hopeful for Bob Dice. because he's a hell of a man, from my hometown, Winnipeg, former Bison coach, former Bison. So there's a lot of history there at the University of Manitoba. And he's a leader of men, but it hasn't panned out. It hasn't panned out. There's been some questionable decisions. And it's funny because you question these coaching decisions when they always go the wrong way. Because if they go the other way, he's a genius and you win a couple extra games, right? But I don't know what the deal is with Ottawa, man. It's stinky over there. It's stinky. And again, keeping somewhat of a pulse, trying to via Twitter or X, it seems like the fans are really disgruntled. And I don't blame them. Losing, it hurts, and people are going to show up with their wallets, and that's the reality of it. And I saw it firsthand here in Edmonton. I'd go to games, and I loved bringing my kids to games. Why did I love it? Because the rows were empty. My kids could run throughout the stadium because they were empty. I didn't have to police them. That's how bad it was here. But people, you win games. This is when Edmonton was playing some bad football. You win games, it changes. There's extra 10,000 people here. So Ottawa, I don't know what it is, man, but they need to they figure out how to win some games next year because they've been in close games. They just haven't finished.
Yeah, I don't, and this is speaking as someone that covers, like the USFL we have teams with 2 years of legacy or XFL or whatever, but like, I don't know what like a Red Blacks fan is. Like, I just can't wrap my head around, like, I know that they had a great, like a million years, feels like a long time ago now. Like, I just don't know what that is in 2023. Like, we hadn't lost at home, only not as long as Edmonton. So it wasn't like as big of a deal. And like, it's just bizarre. So last thing for me, I know we're going long. Oh, go for it.
No, I was going to say you nailed it, man, because you don't know what they are. Like, they haven't lost at home for as long as Edmonton, but they kind of relish the fact that it hasn't been as long.
Yeah. It's like, that's good. There was at one point, because it was, I think one of the weeks, like Sask they were like, oh, they haven't won at home in like however many weeks, and then Ottawa and obviously Edmonton. I'm like, how many teams in the 9-team league can we have ongoing losing streaks at home? Like, it just seems wild to me.
Man. It's bad luck.
Last thing here, thoughts. Montreal gonna, like, presuming they beat Hamilton, like, do they make any noise at all, or is this kind of like last year where they were a field goal away, they could have beat Toronto, but it didn't really matter?
I really think Montreal could make noise. They have a lot of veterans there on defense, and their defense plays some good physical football, and that always bodes well in the playoffs. And they have Stanback, man. William Stanback will allow Cody Fajardo to maybe be an efficient quarterback living in, second and short situations. Because if you have to live in second and long, I don't think, we can ride or die with Cody. But Stanback playing that physical football, I think, really helps that offense. And it helps Cody become the kind of quarterback that he is. The mobile, you can put his legs to use, etc. I think they could make noise, man, solely for defense, run game. You know football just as well as I do. Defense and run games, cold weather, playoff football. That's what does it. That's if they come out and punch Toronto in the mouth, it could happen.
I just felt so bad. He was on because we were trying, like, because we kind of had a few going for a while, so we remedied everything and that was fine. And then he was like got injured and there was all that stuff. So he finally came on the show during the season and like, okay, I've been, came back and I'm ready to go, and then totally just laid an egg in the game. And I felt so terrible because I was so excited, like, because talking to him, it's the most infectious. Like, I just want him to succeed more than anything. And I don't know if it's the team or him or a combination, but I want nothing but the best, but it does seem hard sometimes.
I agree. Great individual. And I've met and played with plenty of great individuals, but we're playing pro sports, which is criticized to a level that it shouldn't be, and you're playing quarterback, which is face of a franchise. So if you're not doing it right on the field, man, the arrow's pointed at you.
Well, Eddie, this has been a delight. Like I said, I appreciate you making the time after everything with the day. It means a lot, and appreciate it. We got to do this again, but I really appreciate it. Anything else from you?
No, brother, this is awesome. I appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, our guest here, I guess, went a little viral over the weekend. We'll talk about all that, but I feel like I have a bona fide internet celebrity here. Jeshrun Antwi, how are you doing, sir?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Crazy week. We'll talk through all that. How's the season going for you? You guys second in the East right now in contention.
Yeah. Seasons has been going well. Lots of ups and downs. Obviously, we had a goal set out to be first in the East at the beginning of the year. We didn't quite accomplish that, but we still got into the dance, and so that's all that matters.
What's kind of the mindset right now in the locker room? How's everyone feeling?
Pretty good. We know the task at hand. We're playing a very tough Ottawa team again. This is the fourth time we're playing them. Every time we play them, it's a tough game. We're very aware of the standings and, with Hamilton and where we are in the standings and what winning the game will mean for us. And we're playing at home. And every time we play at home, we want to defend our home field. So we know where we are, but I think in the locker room, we all feel pretty good. We know the task at hand, and we're just looking forward to playing again.
Well, yeah, I mean, you smacked Ottawa around a little bit here last week. So, I mean, looking to capitalize on that, like you said, you got the home field now, home and home coming back. You just got to take care of business, right?
Yeah, I think, anytime you play any team in this league, you can't ever say, whether you win by, 20 points or 5 points, you can't ever say it's going to happen again. You still got to show up, you got to execute your assignment, and you got to play them tough. And so I think that's what we're looking to do. I don't think they're a bad team by any means. Their record might not show that, but if you watch any of their games, some of the games they've lost come down to the last 3 minutes. I think most of the games have come down to the last 3 minutes. So it's not a team that you can take lightly.
In terms of you guys kind of hitting stride now, I know Stanback's kind of getting back up to speed. He was on our show, I think, pre-last season. What's it feel like? Cody's kind of clicking again now. I know he was banged up. What's it feel like getting everyone back going?
I think it's great. The name of the game is to hit your stride at the right moment. And, we feel like we're just trying to do that. Guys are coming back healthy. Stanback is starting to run like crazy. Our offensive line is playing great. Cody's feeling much better. And so I just think for us right now, we're clicking at the right time. And that's all that matters, to hit your stride as you're going into the playoffs.
Yeah, what kind of, in the huddle or in the locker room, what kind of leader is Cody? What does he give you guys, the energy level?
I think, Cody's a different type of leader. Not so much a rah-rah guy, but a guy that leads by example. He's in here. He gets his work in. He's in the film room. He's in the weight room. He's a guy that everybody in the locker room gets along with, and I think it's a different because sometimes you have quarterbacks, they like to be loud, but just because you're loud, it doesn't mean you're doing anything, right? So I think his style of leadership is just being a guy that shows up and leads by example.
It seems to me, I've had Armando on, I think, a couple weeks ago, and, like I said, with Will and you, it seems like just a really tough both sides of the ball. I mean, how would you characterize your team? I mean, Montreal to me is pretty, I would be killed in anything, but it seems very intimidated. How do you guys view yourselves?
I mean, I think in the beginning of the year, Coach Maz, the identity of this team was to show up and compete. We talk about ability, toughness, and effort. And I think when you watch us play, even if, again, we could be down by 30 or we could be up by 30, the goal is to always show up and play any team tough. And so I think, again, any team that we see in the playoffs, if we play to the best of our abilities and, again, play disciplined football, eliminate mistakes as best as we can, I think we're tough to beat. But obviously I play on this team, so some other people might have a different opinion, and that's fine. But we feel good about ourselves in this locker room as on any given day, we can show up and we can play with the best of them.
All right, so what's going on here? We have this onside punt thing taking the world by storm, and we cover the XFL and USFL, so we're both sides of the border. I'm in Seattle. What's going on with that? Walk me through that.
Well, it's just it's a rule book in the CFL. You can, as a punter on offense, you can punt the ball a yard past the LOS, and you can recover it yourself. So I'm not sure if you saw, but I think a couple months ago, when we played in BC, Coach Mars, there was the same scenario, 2nd and 18. He tried to call the play. We had the look, didn't quite execute it. Came back that week, told him if we got the chance again, call it, and I was going to execute it. And so you've seen the play. When I catch the ball, the first thing I do is find the official to my right, because he's standing right at the sticks, so I know where the sticks are. I look up and I see the defenders are about 10 or 12 yards off, so it gives me enough time to kick the ball and make sure I don't kick it too hard, and also let it go a yard past the line of scrimmage. And so when I kick it, there's a bit of a hesitation because I'm waiting just for it to go past that yard, and then as soon as I get on it, I think number 32 on Ottawa and number 4 put hands on me right away.
In terms of the finesse needed for that, because it's a different skill set. I mean, it's different than just trucking guys running through or whatever. Like, what do you? I mean, how do you practice that, or how do you prepare for that?
Yeah, you practice it, and one of the reasons why in Vancouver, I didn't quite get a chance to execute the play is because if you watch the one in Vancouver, I kind of have the ball like this, and if you watch the one that I executed in Ottawa, I have 2 hands on the ball. So I kind of drop it with both hands and I kick it instead of just dropping it dead shot. But either way, the ball was sideways and I just had to make contact with my foot and I didn't. So, but it's a little bit of finesse as far as not kicking it too far past the line of scrimmage.
I mean, in terms of, I saw this go everywhere and, we're used and I'm still being sent stuff. And I remember when it was the punting back and forth or all these kind of different, especially special team stuff. Like, I mean, is that what you like about the CFL or one of the aspects? I mean, talk about just that and the uniqueness.
I mean, I think, the CFL is a very unique game. As an American, if you've never seen it, like the comments on social media, some guys, some people love it, some people hate it, which is fine. But I think that's what makes our game exciting. There's so many wrinkles and you really got to be like a historian and you got to be a student of the game. And that's what having a coach like Coach Maz does. He's always bringing up all these artifacts and all these cool historical facts about the league. And it's just, to me, is something that kind of makes it a little bit different from the NFL. We know what the NFL is. Everybody knows they're the National Football League, but to me, that's what makes the CFL fun.
What I liked particularly was obviously against Ottawa, and you have Coach Dice, special teams guy. So I'm sure he's sitting there afterward, like, banging his head or whatever. I like that little wrinkle of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Coach Dice, great coach. But like I said, the rule book is in there, but I don't think teams utilize it, especially that play, because it looks easy to execute, but it's not quite easy. I think it may have been done 3 times, and I might have been the only one to ever execute it, I think. I'm not too sure. But it looks easy, but it's much harder to execute.
I just always wonder, like, games like this or, there's whenever something kind of goes off in one of these games, like coming back and checking your phone afterward or whatever and be like, oh, my God, what is going on here? Was it crazy? Yeah,
it was crazy. I think the person that tweeted, I think Barstool tweeted it, and Dov Kleeman, I think that's his name. He's an NFL guy.
Yeah, old Dov. Everyone knows. Everyone knows.
And I don't think he didn't tag me in it, but later on, people would, find out that I'm the person in the play. And so, like social media is blowing up. Twitter is going off. And again, lots of different opinions and a great job. And this is terrible and all these things. But I think it was a fun play,
Well, last thing for me here, like you said, talking to Ottawa this weekend, what's kind of the mindset here? I mean, besides just this weekend, kind of cementing, getting into, cementing second and kind of everything else. What are you looking forward to here heading into the playoffs?
Just, playing solid football. Like I said, I think we have been a team where, we go on a 4-game win streak, and then we go on a 3-game losing streak, and we go on a 4-game, it's kind of been a lot of up and downs. And I think for us and guys in the locker room, I'd say the word is finding some consistency. And like you said, hitting our stride, going into the playoffs, finding some consistency, closing out, the rest of the regular season games, and making sure we feel good about ourselves going into the playoffs. Because, if we can kind of run the table here, end up with a good record, 11-7 record, you go in the playoffs feeling confident in yourself that you can play with anybody else. Not saying if that doesn't happen, we still don't feel confident in ourselves. But I think at this point in the season, there is less room for error and more time for consistency and playing good football, playing disciplined football, staying positive, and being with each other.
Well, Jeshrun, I appreciate it. I'll tag you in this when this goes live Friday, and I don't think it'll go as viral as the Barstool Sports or anything, but certainly appreciate your time. Good luck this weekend.
Thanks for having me, Reed. Take care.
Awesome. Good luck, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Huge special thanks again, like I said, to Dan, Greg, Eddie, and Jeshrun for coming on. I appreciate Francis, everyone over at the Montreal Alouettes for setting up all of that. Think that'll do it for me today. Working through, guests for next week. As always, I think I have a good CFL guest coming on to kind of talk through all of that. And then, we'll see what's going on in terms of the merger stuff and the timelines, everything else with that. I don't expect anything, immediate. Kind of frustrating for fans as we wait through all of this. Who knows? Maybe we do the 2024 seasons. We shift the XFL schedule. We play concurrently, and then we cross promote and figure it out from there. But we'll be interesting to see. Like I said, like and subscribe, turn on the bell and all that stuff, doing the shorts and everything else as the information comes out breaking during the week. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks again. Have a safe weekend.